Welcome to Shine Your Light, where we humanize the conversation and speak on topics that can expand our minds while sharing our own truth. Hi everyone, how you doing? So today we're going to talk about a topic that is very dear to me because around the world, as we've been dealing with this pandemic, a lot of people have been in their apartments or houses. Some of them have had to isolate for some time. Some people have been in part of a lockdown. So no matter where you're in the world, many people have had to be alone. And we hear of stories, we hear of studies and articles that are out there that talk about a growing epidemic of loneliness. So it got me questioning, because which one of us hasn't at one point or the other in our life felt lonely? So I reached out to a friend of mine, Sohini Rohara, who's an integrative counselor. And she says that a lot of her clients are also facing similar patterns where they also feel loneliness and they're dealing with it. In fact, which one of us hasn't felt that way, right? So I said, let's have a conversation, because when we have conversations about topics, we start to expand our minds, but we also start to look for possible solutions. So I'm really excited today because I have Sohini here with us. Hi, Sohini. How are you doing?
Good, thank you. How are you?
I'm well. I'm well.
Good
And
to
this
see you.
topic is so important, right, Sohini? Because it's a growing epidemic. A lot of people around the world are feeling this way. And you've been dealing with this through your clients, but which one of us hasn't, right? So tell me a little about this journey of loneliness. I mean, how did you experience it? How did you cope with it?
So, I would actually like to start not by saying that I am helping my clients cope with it, I'm also helping myself cope with it. I
Right.
mean, look at our current state of affairs. Loneliness has been imposed on us, isolation has been imposed on us. We don't really have a choice. I mean,
Mm.
even if you're an introvert as a person, you always have the choice to step out, socialize when you want, not if you don't want to. But we
Yeah.
have been left choiceless, you
Yeah.
know. So it's actually a pretty dark place because we don't know what to do with this isolation. It's
Sure.
new, it's imposed.
You're right. I mean, no one asked for it, right? I mean,
No.
I guess we were trying to all cope, everyone, the whole world, trying to cope with what cards we had dealt with. And if isolation or lockdown was needed, we did what we had to do. But
Yeah.
the circumstance or the consequence of that, like you said, is loneliness. And a lot of times, it's imposed on you. And now you suddenly are dealing with something you haven't even maybe been aware
Yes.
of. It might have
Yes.
been there, but you were not aware of it. Am I right?
Yeah, so 2 years ago when it started, you had your Zoom parties, Netflix parties. You would post on social media, "Oh, I'm enjoying the isolation, self-care, self-growth," and then it went on to 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, and now we're 2 years in. And 2 years in of forced isolation is extremely hard
Sure.
for
Sure.
anyone. You
But
know.
out of context of this specific time, loneliness overall,
Yeah.
because of just the way the world has kind of changed, where there's these added elements like social media and all these different channels, has also kind of, but added to this feeling. I mean, somehow it's contributed to it, hasn't it?
Most definitely. I mean, you have a platform of comparison. First of all, you don't even know if you're comparing yourself to something that's even real or made up,
So true.
right? I mean, you have couples who could be fighting on their holiday and posting this beautiful, gorgeous snapshot of being on a beach. But
Right.
who knows? Who knows what's happening behind that screen? So you're actually comparing yourself to something that may or may not be true. It just seems perfect, and nothing is.
Right.
So this
Right.
also kind of, you know, pricks into that wound of loneliness and isolation of, I'm not there yet. Can I get there? Will I ever get there?
what I hear you say rightfully here is that even though what may appear to be a reality for someone else, it may not be. I mean, what you see on social media doesn't always have to be accurate,
No.
right? So, but it can actually contribute to your own feeling, is what you're saying. Is what you're saying is that it might even make you
It
feel, wait a second,
most
yeah,
definitely does.
right,
1% or 100%, but it does.
yeah,
So when you're comparing yourself to someone else's life, what do you do? Take your energies back.
mm,
Focus it. Pay attention to that feeling that has come up. Why am I feeling this isolation looking at the person across me on that screen? What do I lack? What do I want? What do I need? What are my desires? What am I looking for?
mm,
These are questions that we need to ask ourselves to understand ourselves.
absolutely. I mean,
Why
it's
am I
absolutely
feeling
gold.
low?
So again,
Yeah.
what you're saying is you're deflecting the outside with the inside by saying, listen, start to ask yourself questions, right? What do I
Yeah.
need? Takes
Yes.
away the onus of being reactive to what's happening outside of you to being able to respond to what's happening inside of you.
Absolutely. Response over reactiveness. So you're focusing your energies back onto yourself
Right.
and understanding your own whys. Why? Why am I feeling this way? Why is this happening to me? And you will find all your because. And when you find your because, then you can start working on where you want to go.
Yeah.
It helps you
Makes
chart
sense.
out your path.
But tell me something. Does the average person, okay, so where do you, I mean, I guess this is a question, I throw it out to everyone, okay? Because I'm
Mhm.
sure at any one point in our life, someone or one of us might have felt this. But how do you know when, you could have cases in life where, people are not around, maybe you feel a little lonely, right? But how do you know it's a real problem? Till suddenly, is it like a bulb goes on, and you go, wait a second,
So,
this
first,
is
let's
really something.
understand what is loneliness.
Yes,
Okay.
let's do that.
Loneliness is the gap, okay, between what your social scene or your social interactions are over what you desire,
Hmm.
right?
Okay.
So, what is that gap? I may have 20 friends, but I desire 30 more friends, or I desire just 5 really famous, successful friends, or whatever your goals are. That gap is what you believe. It's your belief,
Your belief. Okay.
right? So I could be in a room crowded with people in a beautiful nightclub and still feel extremely isolated because of what I believe. And what is that gap in my own head between what I have and what I desire or what I
Wow.
think I need?
I never thought of it that way, Sony. But it's, I can tell you, I'm sure that does happen, right? You could be at a social occasion, you could be at a networking event, and with hundreds of people around you, and really not feel connected, feel alone.
Absolutely
Absolutely.
empty, feel a void. But that's only because of your belief, because of what you think. Your belief
Mm,
may be rational or irrational. I'm not
mm,
labeling that at the moment. I'm just
yeah.
saying that your belief, that gap between what you have and what you desire,
Mm.
is what contributes to your feeling of loneliness.
Wow. Isn't it amazing, Sony, that when you think about a topic this big, you would think that studies would probably show a certain age bracket, maybe later on in life, going through something like this, right? You wouldn't think that youngsters and young adults would feel this way. But I recently read this article, which blew
Yeah.
my mind. It was based on some study, and they found that something like 61%, of the respondents were between 18 to 25 or something like that, young adults that actually were had a trend of feeling lonely. And it threw me off because, when you're that young, you think, right? You'd be more
Yeah.
social, you wouldn't be feeling that way. So as adults, you start to ask yourself these questions. You go, that was something that really hit me by surprise. Sony, tell me about that. Is that something
So
you're seeing as well?
I am seeing that young adults are struggling with loneliness, and men.
Hmm.
These are the two brackets which I personally find are, I mean, I haven't checked the stats, but based on my interaction and experience, I'm finding that these two categories of people are struggling the most at the moment. Young adults, because they're still finding themselves, they're still figuring out relationships, love, independence, career, job, interests, etc. They're redefining themselves. They may be cutting off from their old social circles, finding new social circles. They're just going through a huge transition, and
Right.
they don't, their own age group is too young to understand them, and the older age group is may not understand them because of their own conditioning and their shoulds and should nots. And the younger age group, of course, is too young. So I
Right.
find them struggling a lot, and I find men are also going through a very, very hard time in terms of loneliness.
Sony, I want to address both. Let's address both. Let's first talk about the young adults. And
Hmm.
what I'm hearing you say, and tell me if this resonates, and maybe we can explore again. And again, if you're young adults out there, share with us. I mean, if you can send us a message, let us understand how. I mean, is this something that happens? Have you prevalent? Have you felt it? How are you coping with it? I would like to hear. But just on the top of my head, one of the thoughts, Sonia, comes to me is, like you rightfully said, that age gap, maybe the parents, don't, I see the world differently. These young, minds are creative. They're out of the box thinkers. They want to see the world in a beautiful, different way. And sometimes that desire to see it that way, and maybe other people don't understand it, that could create that feeling of loneliness, right? I mean, it's that big ambitions. um, I find that they come out fresh with these amazing ideas, and a lot of us kind of slow them down. We're going, no, no, that's not right, and that can make someone feel kind of, you know what I mean? They want to
Yes,
they
yes.
want to give you these huge. They come up with this huge box of ideas, and then you go, no, no, those ideas won't work, and it can take away some of that excitement, right? You think that's got something to also that also adds to this whole
So
feeling?
I'm going to take you back to 19-year-old Rajiv.
Okay,
Now tell me how you felt. Lonely or understood?
wow. Okay, I'm going to tell you that I described myself 5 minutes earlier when I said excited, full of energy and ideas, right? But you're right. A lot of times I was ahead of myself because I was seeing things with my visionary mind, right? Like there's so many things I wanted to do, right? And I mean, many times I came across people who would say, nay, naysayers, no,
Yeah,
that's not the way it works, right?
you have many
So
naysayers.
a lot of times I felt taken aback, you know? So yes, 19-year-old Rajiv, even though socially, of course, like you said rightfully, there was a lot of social interactions, everything happening, but there was those instances, I will agree, where you feel alone because you feel like, do you understand me? Is this the way it's supposed to be? You're trying to figure things out. So I really resonate when you said you're kind of trying to find your way.
Yes. And now 19-year-old Rajiv has broken up with his girlfriend and he feels a need to cry.
Right.
Being a man who's 19, where do you go? Who's going to hear you out?
That's true. I hear you. I mean, it's you add the element of your defense is going up. You want to be strong, right? So
Oh,
you
yes,
deflect it, right? Absolutely.
absolutely. So
Very well done.
19-year-old Rajiv goes to a bar and decides to have a drink instead because he's feeling so broken.
21-year-old, right?
21-year-old. Yes,
Yep,
sorry,
it's as
sorry.
well.
21-year-old.
And
Yes.
19, he was at the gym, right? So
I told you I'm
different way
bad
of
with
dealing with
numbers. Yeah. So 21-year-old Rajiv. that's an option. He decides to go for a run, he decides to go to the gym, he decides to have a drink, but there's really a very small space for him to go into and talk about his feelings.
The safe space, right?
Yeah,
Hmm.
it's a very small space, and I'm talking in context to men here.
Okay.
The Because of the conditioning, the acceptance levels, etc. So that's why I'm saying that it's loneliness exists largely amongst young adults and men.
It's really interesting, and this is based on your experience from the clients that you've been working with. You started to
Right.
see a pattern. You're seeing this
Yes.
pattern. Am I right?
Yes. Yes.
And so now moving, because you brought the men, we're going to move now towards the men again. And now, it's a great context, because when you first layered it with a young adult, whether boy, girl, it doesn't make a difference, because as a young adult, you're trying to find yourself,
Yes.
you're trying to figure
Yes.
the world out. So
Yes.
there's that layer of complexity,
Yes.
to be understood. Then you add the next layer of complexity, which is, okay, based on some cultural backgrounds. There's this rigidity that comes with being maybe a man. So you may not be expressing your emotions as much. Maybe it's not accepted culturally in some places, I don't really know. But it adds a layer of complexity, where then maybe they're bottling it up, and as a result of that also creates a space of loneliness, is what I'm hearing you say.
Yes. And then how does that loneliness come through? It comes through loud volume, aggression, emotional aggression, violence, means all the typical labels that are given to men, unfortunately. I don't agree with labeling anyone, but I'm just speaking in a general context. So it's also all your repressed emotions that come through in these unhealthy ways,
Okay.
because primarily is because there's a feeling of isolation, because you didn't he, the man, didn't have a safe space to go to.
I will tell you that it's so interesting, right? Where we are today in this world, where we are, where you see how more and more men, are more emotionally comfortable. They express emotions, which is such a beautiful thing. And one of the things that I talk about, as you know, I talk about love at work,
Love,
which
yes.
is something which is not usually something that people really connect, right? But I'm seeing that the conscious leader today, Soini, is opening up to that space of bringing emotion and realizing that's
It is
important.
changing. It is
So you're right.
changing.
And especially in the pandemic, it's really has increased the amount of people that are, operating through their heart. And it's so beautiful to see, um, in a sense, because you see that we are human beings, whether male, female, we're all human beings. And when we operate from the heart, it's so beautiful. But to your point, of understanding that this is a pattern you're seeing. But now moving towards the the light, and talking about what steps can we take, and what steps have worked. Let's put it this way: what steps have worked for Soini? When you were coping with your loneliness, or when you now talk to others, what steps do you see that can be applied, can help us to start to cope better?
So, first of all, it's very important to one, identify that you're lonely, accept that you're lonely.
Hmm.
Once you have identified and accepted that you're feeling lonely, and you understand your own red flags, you're slipping into isolation, you're feeling empty when you're in crowds, you're feeling unheard, you're feeling unloved, ununderstood, and you go deeper and deeper into your shell. You aimlessly scroll through social media, you shop excessively to fill your void, you know um, all these are red flags of loneliness. Once you have accepted and identified that you are lonely, that's when you start working towards it.
And
So what
again,
do you do?
just putting a disclaimer there. I mean, these could be flags. Of course, they don't have to be, not necessarily always in that, right? Am I
Not
right
all of
about that?
them.
Yeah.
One or two of them. You could have a combination of them. You could have all of them. The more you have, uh, uh, the more severe is your loneliness,
Okay.
right?
But
So
it's basically taking pulse. What you're saying is taking pulse of yourself, in a sense, right? Because if you notice, again, I'm just clarifying for those, because you know me, I'm thinking What about the person who says, "But I scroll endlessly, but I'm not lonely"? Right? I'm just thinking from their point
No,
of view.
no,
Some
no, no,
people,
no. Of course, of
right,
course. You're scrolling endlessly attached with, I am scrolling through social media right now, comparing my life to so and so because I don't know who to reach out to,
right, right.
right? I don't have a friend to talk to. I don't have someone to go for a coffee with. So I'm going to scroll through social media endlessly. That is a symptom of loneliness, attached to the feeling and the belief, the gap that I spoke about.
That's the key. The gap,
That's the
right?
key.
And what you're saying is, and again, I keep on rephrasing because it's important for me to understand here. It's making the connection for yourself, because see, all of these symptoms or acts, will only be in your awareness when you start to put them together and piece that. Wait a second, but I'm feeling this emptiness. So ultimately, like you said very rightfully earlier, it's that feeling of emptiness, that
Yes, the
feeling of
feeling.
something's missing.
Loneliness is a feeling, aloneness is a state,
Ah, nice,
right?
nice.
Yeah. So you have to be able to identify the feeling, but most importantly, accept it. You should be able, should is a big word. Um, Try and say to yourself that I am feeling, I am lonely, and that doesn't define you. It's only a feeling.
Wow,
Because
that is
I'm
really
lonely
powerful.
today. Yes, I'm lonely today. Tomorrow I may not be
You
lonely at
separate
all.
yourself from the feeling.
Yes. From the feeling,
So
from the label,
yeah,
you are not the feeling. You are not the label. You are not the behavior. You are just you. And
yeah,
you're constant. Your feelings, your behaviors, labeled behaviors, they're fluid. They keep changing. Only
yeah,
you are constant. Sometimes you're lonely, sometimes you're not, sometimes you're kind, sometimes you're not, sometimes you're angry, sometimes you're calm. So who are
yeah.
you really? You're just you.
You are just you. It's just that expression of feeling. The feeling
Yes.
is an expression that you can go through you, right? So it goes through you, experience it, you accept it. But I like the fact that you're in awareness of it. And when you identify that belief system or that emptiness, whatever you want to call it, you start to see a pattern. And then the patterns are where you can start to say, okay, maybe there is something here going on. Now you start to deal with it by, at least what I heard you say earlier, is accepting it. So not,
Accept.
okay. Do you find that that's a difficult stage for people to accept? Or is it
Yes.
natural? Is it people
No,
find it? What is your find?
it's difficult. It's the moment you accept it, then you also need to accept that you need help.
Hmm.
And then who needs help? Someone who is so called viewed as weak, incapable, fragile,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
But
The
you are not
connotation,
that.
the connotations that some
The
people attach,
conditioning.
the conditioning.
Also, yes, yes, it's your conditioning. You're not. Everybody needs help.
Of course.
You're okay to say I can't cook, but you need to eat or you won't survive,
Fair. So
right?
it's responsive, responding to the fact that now you're aware. So the first thing, the first condition was accept the fact that okay, I am now. Okay, so say
Yes.
you've gone through that step, you've accepted. What's next?
So I am experiencing loneliness. It hurts, but I am okay. I am okay. Whether I'm lonely, whether I'm angry, whether I'm sad, whether I'm depressed, I am okay. So I'm okay,
Right.
but I'm lonely at the moment. And I don't
Me.
enjoy this feeling of loneliness. And I see myself drowning. So now I need to work to get out of it and feel okay again. So I am okay, but I also want to now feel okay.
Nice.
I always stay okay. I don't change. Everything around me changes. My feelings, my emotions, my behaviors, they're all changing, but I stay okay.
I like what
I am secure. I
I
am
like
okay.
I like what I'm hearing, Sony, because what I heard you say right now is so A, you accept it. B, you
Yeah.
start to understand that as you start to solution it, you separate yourself from the feeling,
Yeah.
but you also, it's almost like you set an intention that says, okay,
Yeah.
I'm going to find a way to solution this out. It almost feels like it is an intention. Now, I don't know
Yeah.
if that was how you said it or that's how I interpreted it, but am I right
No,
in saying that
yes,
you set an
no, no,
intention?
no. You are right. You are right. But setting an intention and stepping out to fix something that is broken takes courage. The
Correct.
courage comes from first accepting that I am okay and my feeling does not define me.
Right.
So once you have accepted yourself as fine and okay, separated yourself from the feeling, because now the feeling is not you, it's just a feeling that has to be corrected.
Correct. Nice.
It becomes easier to then work on that feeling.
Because you bring your power back. You bring
Of
back the
course,
power.
you're secure
I'm not
now.
broken. It's just a situation I can deal with.
It's just my feeling. It's what's happening around me,
Okay.
So
Nice.
then you become secure, you become solid again, you become grounded again, and you have the strength. You take the reins back in your hand. You focus
Right.
your energies back towards yourself. So now that I'm feeling lonely, I have accepted that I'm feeling lonely. So now I can take this time, one, to identify what are my needs, what are my
Mm.
desires, what makes me happy. Most, no, a lot of people don't have answers to these questions. If I'm going to walk on the street and grab 10 random people and say, what are your needs? What are your desires? And what makes you happy? Tell me right now. It's
Yeah.
hard.
God, I mean, it's funny, Sony, because you and I do this kind of work where I work with people on well-being as well, and it's one thing to say, well, this makes me happy, that makes me happy, but when you ask someone that question, really, what makes you happy? What are your needs? It's a very deep question that really requires you to be very vulnerable, right?
So, what
To
you really
answer.
need and what you desire, both are
Yeah.
separate.
Absolutely, absolutely. In fact, Sony, can I make a statement here before we go to these tips? Okay.
Yes.
During the pandemic, I made a statement in one speech that I was giving, where I spoke about, we've identified during the beginning of the pandemic, we've identified what's the difference between need and what we want, because in the pandemic, so many of us realized that a lot of the things that we thought we needed were just wants, but what we really needed, the people that we love were all part of that room. We managed to do so many things and overcome so many things with what we had. So
Yes.
you're really true. What you say is what you state, that statement you made is very true and very accurate. Identifying what you need versus what are your desires is a very powerful exercise and tool.
Yes. So, what I need, I will tell you what I need. Let's personalize it. What I find is my primary need is to consistently, and when I say consistently, I mean consistently stay connected to myself, hold a space for myself. I am my primary need.
Wow. Yeah.
And
Right.
then there's everything else.
And Sony, isn't it interesting that maybe we've all been conditioned, or some of us, again, I don't like to generalize, but to believe that, should we put ourselves as a priority, or we should be, people have that feeling
Of
of guilt
course.
when they think
Of
about
course.
prioritizing
Yes.
themselves. But the truth is, and I say the same thing when I talk about self-love, is you must prioritize yourself. You must, love yourself first so that you can
Yes.
then love others, right? um,
Yes.
I love that. I love that statement. That was very important. Prioritize yourself.
Yes. So in times of loneliness, primarily connect to yourself. Primarily.
Your point number 5, when I read point number 5, I smile when I read this again, because it's something which, we all know, right? But we forget, right? And
Yeah.
again, to build our resilience, it's about bringing back and holding on to that gratitude in our life, holding on to all the beautiful things around, and just reminding us, wait a second,
Yeah.
we have
Yes.
so much around us that's beautiful. I love that.
Yes.
To me, it fills my cup every time I think of something like this. You know
Yes.
what I mean?
So this was an experience I had a few days ago. In fact, I was coming back on a speedboat and it was extremely choppy. And I looked around, and it was so, there was only sea, and there was vastness, and there was seagulls floating, on top of the water, choppy water, and they were still, the seagulls were so untouched by
Uh-huh.
that stormy sea. We
Right.
had we had a dust storm in the Arabian Sea, and it was really, really crazy.
Okay.
And that's when I was like, wow, just look at our planet. It's so gorgeous. It has so much to offer you. Why are you feeling alone? It has something to offer you everywhere: the water, the sky, the oxygen, the grass, the trees, people, children, everywhere.
Mm. And what I before we turn around today and say bye, and before I ask you to give us your concluding thoughts, I want to acknowledge one thing you just mentioned today, and that is the whole idea of shine your light and having these conversations to humanize the conversation. It's not about giving anyone the answer or coming up with the solution. It's really about talking about it and coming up and saying, this is how we cope. These are some things that, like Sony, today you shared some experiences and some how you cope and how maybe your clients handle this. But it always leaves me with questions. Right after these conversations, I get into this state of pondering and thinking, right, and I start to deepen the thought. And today I walk away with one really amazing feeling, is that when you can separate the feeling from you and you can take back that power and understand that it's not helpless. You're not helpless because you feel this way, and that
Yeah.
it's not about it's just the feeling at this point in time. And if you really want to find a way to look at coping with it, it's bring back that self-love and start to pay attention to yourself again. Identify within what are your needs
Yes.
and what are your desires, what are the gaps, why are you feeling that way. But don't hold yourself at contempt for feeling that way. Give yourself the
No.
permission to feel it, and
Yes.
yet also realize the beautiful things out there that you can be grateful for. You bring the
Yes.
circle back to yourself and you give yourself
Yes.
the permission to overcome that feeling.
Yes. So you are inclusive of your feeling completely. I am angry. I am furious. I am alone. I'm sad. I'm breaking. But I am okay. I am okay is such a beautiful coping statement. It's one of the tools I often use. I am okay. Whenever you're in a crisis or whenever you can't think straight, just tell yourself, I am okay.
Beautiful.
I am okay does not take away your pain. It doesn't take away your struggle. You're just reminding yourself that irrespective of all the turmoil, I am fine. I am okay. Nothing defines me. Nothing.
Wow. Sonia, I I love having conversations with you. You and I can sit there and we can
I love
talk.
talking to you too. Yes.
But today I really thank you for sharing. I know we didn't. It's a big topic. It's not something that we were going to zoom in too much on with the 27 minutes we can talk. But thank you for sharing your thoughts today and for telling us that there is a way that we all can start to cope with these things. And hopefully we can, there will be people with questions. We can probably answer them, direct them to Sohini. So hopefully you can answer some of these questions for them as well.
Be
What
more
are
than
your
happy
final
to.
thoughts on this topic? What do you think? What would you want people to take away? I mean, you've shared amazing tips. Anything specific you want to leave everyone with?
Actually, I'm going to take forward what you said. I am okay, and there is always a way. Always.
Always.
Always. There will
Always a way.
always be a way. Yes.
And in the
Don't.
word always, there's
Yes.
always. I
Yes.
love that. Clever girl.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
I like that.
Oh,
See,
well,
you're
you
good
broke
with
it down
words.
further. See, there is always a way there, and there are all ways you can take.
Brilliant. Brilliant.
Don't get stuck. Don't get stuck. There is always a way. There's always hope, and everything can be worked out.
And Sony,
Everything.
I love what you said. I second that. And before we go today, I will just share with everyone, that no matter what, I always say this and I'll repeat it today as well, is you're not alone. no, just remember, you're not alone. There's people out there that will support you. This world is a beautiful place, and there's a lot of people with open hearts who are out there to hold the space with love and grace. Um, and no matter the situation, all of us go through situations. I understand some can be troubling. If you are dealing with loneliness, you know, I hope that maybe something that today's conversation has shared is something you can look at. If it works or not, it's something for you to gauge. But at least one thing is defined today, which helps me today take away from here, is the fact that I can separate the way I feel from who I am. And if we start to do that more, then it's you can start to see the beauty of who you are as a person, as a human being, and not have to minimize yourself because of a situation or a feeling. um, so I leave you all out there with a big hug. I hope wherever you are, you're safe. Sony, it's been a pleasure to have you here again.
Thank you for having
Looking
me,
to
Rajiv.
many more conversations. Thank you, Dheeraj, for that amazing conversation, for that comment. And I hope that we see you all again on the next one. So thank you for being here, everyone. See ya.
Thank
Thank you so
you.
much.
Thank you, Rajiv. Thank you, everyone. See you.